All right, and welcome to the Nebraska High School Game Day show. First, or not first time, week zero kind of was virtual, but virtual edition here. John Willis joined by Jane Taylor for hopefully the first and only time that we do this virtually. Had to do it due to some unforeseen circumstances, but we still want to be able to bring you this coverage because we got the playoffs starting this week, the first round. I'm John Willis, joined alongside Jaden Taylor. Jaden, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Here at my own house, I guess our own usual in studio place. But it's a lot of great matchups this week. A lot of great games. I know our game of the week is a tight matchup. One of the biggest rivalries down in Lincoln.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and before we start talking about the playoffs, get into our regular season week 8 recap. So, not a whole lot of games capping off Friday. Of course, we recapped the Thursday games in our show last week, but we saw Lincoln Southwest narrowly taking out Lincoln High 14-7. And then this one I think was a big surprise, at least to me. I don't know about you, Jaden, but Millard North absolutely dominating Fremont. Millard West falls to number 10 North Platte 17-7. Lincoln East continues their winning streak with a big win. Grand Island wins 34-13 against Norfolk, and of course Millard South gets that dominating win. So Jaden, I guess what were your big takeaways from this week?
From what I saw, Miller West, another really struggling week. It was a closer game for them. That offense has just been atrocious so far this year. It's really been hard to see, especially with so many guys out with injury. And then we saw, that Miller North game. I picked Fremont in that game.
Yeah.
I thought Fremont might have a commanding lead in this one. Jimmy Quayton's, goodness gracious, what an amazing week for him. And he's really put that team on his back, in the back half of the season ever since that West Side lost earlier in the year. I think Miller North's really trying to make some noise and maybe give themselves as a dark horse going into these playoffs. Other than that, Millard South just dominating Lincoln North Star. Not, I think I would have thought North Star might have been able to put a point up at least. But I know there's actually some pretty cool stories out there, at that Millard South Lincoln North Star game. Both teams do have some guys who have tried out these last few years who do have some special needs on both teams. And they were able to, in that, pretty big blowout game, that fourth quarter, we were able to see both of them come out late in that fourth quarter and make a little play, a play overall. It's one incompletion, and then an actual catch. It was a really cool sight to see, especially to be able to get both teams with some really great moments for some people, that'll never forget it, for those two that were able to be out there for both teams. It's just something that they'll remember forever. And it's really cool to see both programs really, supporting those people who have helped them, whatever that way they can in the last couple of years, a part of their program. Even with the Millard South domination in that game, it was really fun to see in that fourth quarter. Kind of a heartfelt moment.
Yeah, for sure. Always love to see that kind of stuff in sports. It's just awesome to see. And I could speak a little bit more on that Millard West game. So, when you thought Millard West couldn't have any more injuries, they had some more. So, running back Nathan Peterson was actually out in that game with a concussion. He is expected to be back. He was full participation in practice this week. So, he should be back for their playoff game, but he was out against North Platte. And so, already backup quarterback Brady Braw had to move to running back, and freshman quarterback, coach, it's actually the head coach's son, Brock Peterson, had to come in and play quarterback. So, just more injuries for that Miller West team. They've been dealing with that all year, been really rough for them. But yeah, like I said, I'm really impressed with Millard North. They've kept on getting better throughout the year and have kept on improving. And I just think, like you said, they're kind of a dark horse team. I think because of the strides they've made this year after a tough start to the season, I think they've done a really good job coming back and kind of competing well in that ones. So let's recap our game of the week and what we thought would be a close one. Boy, oh boy, it was not close at all. West Side dominating St. Thomas Aquinas. Of course, St. Thomas was dealing with a lot of injuries, but Cole Payton put on a big show. Jaden, I know you and I were on the call for that one. What were your biggest takeaways from how the Warriors played?
We talked about those injuries. Not as much of what we've seen from Millard West so far this year. But Blake Anderson was, their main quarterback, another running threat for them, which they lost. Tank Young, had a really good night, was able to get past some defenders, was really never able to make a big play at that O line. They also had a wide receiver, one of their main wide receivers out And I know we were talking to Brandon Axman this last week. Their number 2 wide receiver, 54 yards in their first 5 games, and that was it. I mean, they weren't known as a passing team overall. That was known to come into the game. The way that St. Thomas, or I guess excuse me, Aquinas was going to win that game is really if they shoot up the clock and just took over the momentum of that game. And we didn't see that at all right out of the gate. I mean, Westside was just able to pummel the defense. And we saw, I was in the film room. We're talking a lot with the guys at Coach Freund about what they put together. And they really wanted to attack that secondary of St. Thomas, or excuse me, of Aquinas. And they were able to do it very well. To add that to the running game that they already have, I mean, Avante Dickerson was the running back in that Norfolk game when Dominic Rizak was out. Dominic Rizak coming back in that game and having another stellar night. And there was really nothing that defense from Aquinas could do. I know we thought they could be a little bit of a scarier one for Westside, but I mean, Westside just blew through that entire defense and really just shut down any kind of other offense than maybe a little bit of Tank Young.
Yeah, I knew Westside was super good, but never actually seeing them live and then going in to see them live, I was just so impressed with everything they're doing. I mean, that team is so incredibly good. I know there was a lot of controversy about who got the 1 and the 2 seed here at the end, and we'll kind of discuss that a little later. But I mean, Westside was just so dominant, was really impressed by how they played. So now we do got a quick highlight video from that game. Please see a lot of Cole Payton highlights in there. We'll take it away from there. So yeah, just a dominating performance by the West Side Warriors, as you kind of saw, just controlled that whole game. So Jaden, I guess just your final thoughts on how the Warriors did this season.
I mean, I know we talked about that a lot, with Cole Payton. I mean, he had two 60-yard touchdowns, rushing touchdowns, both on little fake pitches. And I think that's another thing that the Warriors been bringing into their offense. They're very versatile, like we've talked about before, and they're able to change up their game plan a lot. We saw a lot, like both of those Cole Payton runs that we saw in that video as well. So if you guys go, watch that full game, they're both fake pitches out to the right. We saw all three. We saw a trip wide receiver option over to the right. And then Cole Payton, with that fake motion, would open up that offensive line to where he can get either that A gap or cut out to the left side. And both of those runs were just amazing for him. On the defensive side of the ball, not enough recruiting for this guy, Tommy Connolly. I mean, an amazing guy, built dude who can run faster than I've seen anybody in my life. He's a dude, I mean, he runs the ball very well, even as a running back. He's a punter. I mean, the dude plays baseball as a center fielder in baseball. And he's just the guy really easily able to see. We saw in that video, got to punch out later in that game to get another touchdown. Also had one to start off the beginning of the game, had 3 sacks on the night. It was just a defensive menace for a team like Aquinas. I think we're going to see a lot of him upcoming the playoffs as well in this next couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, I'm totally with you. I was really impressed by a lot of guys in that game. But moving on, starting to get into the playoffs, looking at the final rankings of the regular season. Of course, we usually base our rankings off the Omaha World Herald, but with the playoff rankings, we changed it this time for the NSAA. So the top 8. Bellevue West at number 1. I think that's, of course, the biggest shocker throughout all these rankings. You got Westside at 2, Millard South at 3. There was, I think, a little bit of maybe Lincoln Southeast could take over at that 3 spot, but because of the strength of schedule, they did give that to Millard South. And then you got Elkhorn South at number 5. Don't think that's a big shot. Creighton Prep, after a struggling start to the year, they've been bouncing back. They're in that 6th spot. Lincoln East 7, 8 Gretna, and then Kearney and North Platte right outside the top 8. So Jaden, just looking at the top 8, who gets that bye? Do you think that they got that right? And what would you have changed?
I mean, for me, I'm a West Side alum. I'm always gonna go for West Side in those opportunities. But I think this overall opportunity really actually gave West Side a better opportunity to get themselves an easy road to the championship once again. I mean, Bellevue West is gonna have to go no matter what through either Lincoln Southeast or Elkhorn South, 2 teams that I think that can give them a scare, later in that matchup. I understand how, the committee, who I know a lot of back and forth to, if they're really should be the guys, putting to these efforts of who should get the rankings. I know there's a lot of back and forth controversy that these guys are really qualified to pick these games or these standings. Bellevue West, I understand how you want to put them at 1. The reigning champions, of course, and from a lot of things I've heard, they've even gotten even better. West Side's a great team overall. But I don't think they've really had a solidifying win up against a top 5 team like we've seen Bell West have. They went up against Millard South, and that dominating victory against Millard South, I think, easily projected them to the number 1 seed. I can understand how that's their setup. I think West Side's the better team. Of course, I'm going to go with them. But at the end of the day, what Bell West has done throughout this year really gives them that spot at the number 1 spot. Going down the line at the number 8, last couple spots, Gretna, I think, is one of the luckiest groups to seed one of these last couple games. I mean, North Platte bumped up to the 10 seed. Kearney also almost was able to take down Elkhorn South almost in overtime, lost by 7 overtime. If they would have won that game, I think it would have been really up in the air if Kearney would have been able to take over Gretna, even though Kearney is a team under 500. They had such a hard schedule this year. But again, Gretna, I think, is ridiculously lucky to be able to have a first round bye, especially with all their COVID exposures. With a lot of guys out this week, possibly if they would have played this week, they would have had a lot of guys out. Maybe not as much rest if they were that 9 seed. But moving up to the 8 seed, I think it's really beneficial for them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna definitely agree with you. Gretna, I don't think has had a big win yet, but I mean, I can see why they were given the 8th seed. Still playing extremely well this year, but yeah, with that COVID exposure, I think that's going to do great deals for them, just to get back hopefully fully healthy for them. And then, talking about the 1 and 2 seed, like you said, Bellevue West, the reigning champs, and they haven't lost yet. And I said this on the game day show when we were at Champions Plaza at Phillips Field. That win over Millard South, I think, coming down to it, I just think that's a better win, especially the way they did it than maybe what Westside has had this year. I honestly don't know who the better team is because I've seen both of those teams live now, and they're just so dominating in multiple aspects of the game. And I'm just glad that we've set it up so that those teams are scheduled to meet in the state championship.
Yeah, I mean, with that, I mean, with those back and forth opportunities, I don't think anybody else could have been one or two. Millard South, I don't think he's really played even to their potential so far this year. A lot of their games, I've been talking to even some people at Millard South, they don't feel that they've really dominated a game so far. They don't feel like they're even really what they were last year. I mean, they lost a lot of guys. Isaiah Harris last year was their main running back. They've kind of retooled it this year, their running game. But they don't have as strong of an old line like they did last year. And I can't really even see them as a 3 seed, even competing too much, to get to that state championship.
Yeah, so let's start getting into the bracket. We're actually just going to go down the bracket here, starting with the 1 seed. I mean, Bellevue West, of course, number 1, they get the bye to start out the playoffs. And then actually in our game of the week, Lincoln Southwest and Lincoln North Star playing at Seacrest. Whoever wins will advance to play Bellevue West. So what are you looking for, Jaden, in that game? And then what are you looking for then advancing to play the undefeated Thunderbirds?
I mean, I'm going to say this in my picks as well. Lincoln Southwest and Lincoln North Star. This is going to be a game of momentum. North Star, a really good first quarter team. I believe they score almost 80% of their entire points in that first quarter so far this year. They both score about 18 and a half. Not two very prolific offenses, but it's really going to be a low scoring game. We'll see like a 17-10, 17-14 game. But then Lincoln Southwest, they're a very big fourth quarter and second half team. They start off really slow in that first quarter, but they really grow up into that back half of the game. And I think this game, in no mind whatsoever, is going to be done at halftime, even if it's a really big lead for North Star or even Southwest. The back and forth game, like it is with both these teams being pretty good teams, it's going to come down to late in that fourth quarter who can win in crunch time.
Yeah, it'll definitely be a good one. And of course, the winner will go on to play the defending state champs, Bellevue West. So now moving on, going down to the 8th seed. Of course, you got Lincoln Northeast going up against Kearney. Whoever wins will advance to play Gretna. And I want to know what your take on this is. Kearney, even though their record doesn't show it, they've had, I think, along with maybe Millard North and Millard West, the toughest schedule in Class A. And I have a feeling that they could be a team that could pull off maybe an upset. I mean, it wouldn't be an upset against Northeast, but maybe against Gretna in the next round.
Yeah, I mean, with that, I mean, Kearney is truly a legitimate team, and that's why they're the 9 seed. Even though at 2-4, I believe all four of their losses so far this year are up against top 10 teams. And here's the one thing that I think is kind of weird to see: the 2 teams that I think even prolifically even came up against Westside. One of the top 10 teams. Either 1 or 2, no matter what, with Bell West, of course. Kearney and Papio South. Those are the only 2 teams that I saw in person that even came up against Westside and even kept it close. I mean, Kearney was within that game 14-21 points up until that fourth quarter. And Westside had the commanding lead throughout. That game was never over until garbage time in the fourth quarter. And Kearney has a team that can win some games. And if they beat Lincoln Northeast, which I believe they will, I mean, it's not too much of a contest up against Lincoln Northeast, a program that has struggled for so long. And Kearney, I think, will be a team, if they get past this first hump, which I think they will be a scary team going up against Gretna and that young Zane Flores offense.
Yeah, I am definitely interested because I do as well think that they'll probably get past Northeast probably pretty easily. And, we've talked about it. Gretna hasn't really had a big, top 10 win so far this year. Of course, they had a big game against Elkhorn South, lost pretty handedly. And so I feel like you said, Kearney's going to make some noise in these playoffs. But moving on, the 5th seed Elkhorn South Storm get the bye. And then you got Papillion, La Vista South, and Fremont. And the winner will play Elkhorn South.
Yeah, I mean, Papio South Fremont, I think might be a better game than most people are going to think it's going to be. I mean, Fremont runs the ball. They, run back, Micah Moore at that offensive style of the game. And, down at Heatham Field, which is, essentially the Midland Field up in Fremont, it's going to be a small town atmosphere. And I think that whole town's going to get around him, especially against a team like Papio South. They've had a couple games there, but they've really lost expectations. We really thought that they were, possibly going to be a top 10 contender so far this year. And they really have not been able to go up to expectations whatsoever. The momentum is not on their side. I think Fremont has had a really good season, especially with what they've brought together after losing some guys earlier in the season. And Fremont is going to have somewhat of a tough task if they win this game going against Elkhorn South. But I think all three, both of these games set up, whoever goes up against Elkhorn South. If Fremont can beat Papio South, I think it'll be an interesting game to see who can go up against Elkhorn South.
Yeah, I mean, I really like what Elkhorn South is doing right now. I feel like they're one of those teams that has a chance. I mean, we always talk about how Bell West and West Side are at the top, and like everybody else is below them. But I just feel like the way Elkhorn South does things, I feel like they could be one of those teams to pull off an upset. But like you said, Fremont's been doing extremely well this year considering the circumstances. I do think that Elkhorn South is bound to continue moving on. But it definitely should be good, and especially in that Papio South Fremont game. So now moving on, Papillion La Vista traveling to play Columbus at 3, very early game at Pawnee Park, and then whoever wins that game will advance to play the undefeated Lincoln Southeast.
Yeah, I mean, with that, this is the one of the games that we still can't figure out who's gonna, where you're gonna watch this game. We've been able to figure out just about all the others. Columbus Papio, I think this is gonna be a better game than most people think. 2-6 Papio, another a Metro school versus Columbus. Columbus started off the year against Scottsbluff in Class B, only beat them 13-0. But they're another team like Fremont, who is a very, old style of football team who's gonna ground and pound and really chew up clock. I think Columbus's ability to get that breakdown in those games is really helping them so far this year. That's why they're at 5-3. They haven't really faced too many really good teams and been able to come against them. But then we saw that Bellevue West game. I think Columbus has shown that they're somewhat of a dark horse in some of these games. When they went up against Bellevue West, they're up by 7 at half. When's the last time a team like Columbus was able to take a give someone of a scare to a team like Bellevue West, which is one of the best teams that we've seen in the past 20 years. And Columbus, of all teams, is the one giving them a scare. I think it'll be interesting to what they can do up against, Seth Obermeyer and Papio La Vista.
Yeah, I mean, I think Columbus might. I mean, I'm going to go against you. I think they might cruise through this opening round game, but then they'll have a tough test against Lincoln Southeast, who's done nothing but win this year. You can talk about their strength of schedule, but I mean, they're 7-0 right now, looking really good. And if I'm not, they're going to get 2 straight bye weeks now because their game last week was canceled, and now they have the bye week this week. So they'll they'll definitely be rested. Maybe see if that impacts how they come out the gate on October 30th when they play that playoff game. But yeah, like you said, I mean, I think Columbus was the team that gave Bellevue West the biggest fight this year. They ended up losing by a bunch, but they kept it close for that first half. And even doing that against a team like Bellevue West is difficult in itself. And so, yeah, I mean, watch out for Columbus. So
Now, I'm surprised you're not with the Papio South clan, like, or the Pavilion La Vista clan, like you've been so far this year.
no, after after the last game, I think, and I hate to say it, but I think I'm officially hopping off the Papillion La Vista train. It's a sad day, but I think I got to do it. I got to do it.
That'll be interesting. Hard fan to lose. Hard fan to lose.
Yeah. Yeah. So moving on, Millard South getting the bye at 6-1, and then at the bottom we got Bellevue East traveling to play Millard West. Well, I mean, I will have that game on Strive TV. Can't wait for that one tomorrow night. But I mean, if Millard West wins, it'll be a rematch of the Battle of Q Street. What are you looking for in this part of the bracket?
I mean, if you told me the start of the season, August 27th, that Millard West would have a worse record than Bellevue East to start off this season, I don't know how I would have looked at you. It would have been ridiculous. I mean, Millard West, the injury prone has just been horrible for them. And the offense has just been atrocious so far these last couple of weeks. It's not what you want to see like a program out of Millard West. a 14 seed, is not what you want to see, especially in that program. They've had a lot of really tough losses. They were obviously, that a lot of these games, they've been going up against a lot of top 10 teams and been truly the worst team. I thought they could possibly be the better team going up against North Platte, and they weren't. It's hard to see, especially losing Nathan Peterson, to have, a freshman guy under center. It's really hard to see what they've been doing so far this season. Bellevue East is in no mind a contender in these top 24 teams. I think they can give Millard West a fight. It'll be interesting to see both, on both sides. It'll be a low scoring game. I think it really comes down to how Nathan Peterson can come back and how, that offensive line can match up against Bellevue East. It'll be an interesting game back and forth, but I think it'll be a dogfight.
I mean, yeah, I mean, like you said, Millard West, every single game they've had has been against a top 11 opponent, not top 10. Millard North sitting at that 11 spot, but it's been up against a top 11 team in Class A. And so, especially with all the injuries, and, other than I think Millard South and Bellevue West, even with a lot of their key guys out, they've been able to fight against good teams. And, getting Nathan Peterson back, hopefully Brady Brawl will be starting at quarterback once again. And when he's been starting and Nathan Peterson's been there, the offense has been moving pretty well and going up against not great Bellevue East team. But on Bellevue East, you got star quarterback TK Barnett, who leads the team in passing and rushing and has also caught a touchdown this year. He's been pretty much the whole offense for the Chieftains this year. And he's only a sophomore, so he's going to continue to get better. I think it'll be interesting to see how he goes up against a Millard West defense, who is getting Tyler Jett back at that defensive end position, which is a big need for them. Of course, they missed him a lot in that North Platte game. But, I mean, I'd be interested to see if Millard West and Millard South played in the next round at Battle of Q. I mean, even though Millard South ended up winning that game pretty handily, the score was 3-0 at halftime.
Yeah, I mean, Millard South, not one of their better games up against Millard West. Like I said, they really haven't had a really strong game so far this year. Talking to a lot of people, they really haven't seen that Millard South has really come to their full potential with the offense they have. I mean, the O-line is still a strong force. It's easily his top 5 O-line in the state of Nebraska. And, TJ Urban, going to Air Force, going to be a senior season. This is really where he can make his name known. And show that he's one of the top guys in the state.
Yeah. So moving on, you got the early game at Buell tomorrow. Millard North hosting Norfolk, and the winner will advance to play Creighton Prep.
Yeah, I mean, seeing that Creighton Prep is a 6 seed coming out of that first game. I know it's a team like Westside that took down a team like Creighton Prep. We saw that most likely it would be a pretty good win for Westside in that game. But what I saw from Creighton Prep in that game is nothing of what this team is now. I mean, Creighton Prep has been able to come back from a couple double digits deficits these last couple of weeks, and they've really flipped the script on their offense, and they're really a top contender to a couple teams. Millard North, Jimmy Quaintance is really, like I said, put his team on his back, winning the last couple of weeks, getting some good wins, and really blowing out some teams that they really think they might not even beat. They're going against Norfolk, really struggling season. We saw them going up against Westside. Their offense just really couldn't put it together. A lot of offsides, a lot of ticky-tack plays that they really should have made up against a team like Westside. They've had a really struggling season so far. But they'll see if they can really put a fight together going up against Millard North.
I mean, yeah, and if Millard North is able to take care of business on Friday, I feel like they could at least be. I think they're another one of those dark horse teams just because of how their schedule's been this year and how they've been improving throughout the season. I feel like they would have a chance to take down Creighton Prep.
Yeah, I mean, with that, I mean, Millard North, like I said, I mean, Jimmy Quaintance has just been the guy for him. That offensive line is amazing. They also have Joseph Cox, who is the main guy, kind of a fullback guy. I mean, the dude looks like a defensive tackle. I mean, he's 226.3. I believe I have to check that again. I believe he's about 226.3. And having a fullback like that, it's not a guy that's going to get you big runs, not a guy that's going to get you 20, 25-yard runs to the house. It's a guy that's going to, work past that defense and just tire them out through, out any kind of game. And going up, it's, if they can, get past Norfolk with some ease, I think they have a really good chance at taking down Creighton Prep.
Yeah, so it'll definitely be a good game at Buell. See if Millard North can advance. Of course, they got the doubleheader with Millard West playing the late game. So now moving on, Lincoln East sitting at the 7 seed. They got the bye. And then Lincoln High playing North Platte. North Platte coming off a huge win against the struggling Millard West Wildcats.
Yeah, I mean, Lincoln East has really been a good, a really good story so far this season. We didn't really see them being a top 10 team coming out of the gate. They really thought that, they'd be hovering around the 10, 11, 12 spot with some really good matchups. They were really close up against Lincoln Southeast. That's one of their tougher games they've had so far this season. And they really made Lincoln Southeast have an offense, which I think, in my opinion, that game up against Lincoln Southeast, really solidified what Lincoln East can do, even though they lost that game. But I think it projected, Lincoln Southeast to see what their faults were and really projected even become an even better team going up against, some of those later games. And I don't think they really could have done it without that, really close win up against Lincoln East. On the other side, I mean, North Platte going up against Lincoln High. Lincoln High, another one of those bottom feeder Lincoln teams who've had a really, really tough season so far. Going up against some even lower class, Lincoln teams and some lower, Class A teams haven't really been able to find much success. The running game is really what they need to do up against North Platte if they want to keep their season alive. But North Platte's ground game has been so good so far this season that O-line is the big story for North Platte. I think, along with Millard North, those are really the two seeds that I see possibly having somewhat of a dark horse going in these first couple rounds.
I mean, and yeah, if North Platte's able to advance, they play Lincoln East, and they've already played this year. I think Lincoln East won 21-7, if I'm not mistaken. And so, it was close. I mean, only a 14-point game. So North Platte, definitely a team that could make some noise, especially coming off the big win and the regular season. So now, last part of the bracket, you got the West Side Warriors at the 2 seed. They got the bye. And then Lincoln Pius and Grand Island playing at 7 p.m. at GI Memorial Stadium.
Yeah, I mean, Grand Island has, had a little bit of a struggling season so far. We saw them, someone that's like a Papio South, really had a high, I guess you and me had some really high expectations for both those teams, and Grand Island hasn't been able to meet them. They've had a tough schedule so far this season, going up against a team, like Westside. They've already played them so far this year. Were able to be, blown out 49-0 at half. And, the second quarter, the second half of that game, the 35-point rule, keeping that running clock going, just kept a running game, nothing else going on either side. The second half went like a breeze. But I mean, Lincoln Pius going up against, Grand Island. Pius is a really storied program. Not a ton of, prolific offenses that we've seen. But they're really a small town, someone actually, even in a bigger city like Lincoln, comparatively to Nebraska, they really have a small town vibe. They have a lot of, re-emerging guys from their olden days, a lot of, sons of sons, playing in a lot of these games. And I think Lincoln Pius is a really good story going up against Grand Island. Both of these teams are a little bit slower on the offensive side of the ball. I think this would be a ground and pound game. This one, I don't think will be over until about the third quarter.
Yeah, I'm agree with you on that one. I mean, 18 and 15 going against each other. I think that definitely has the opportunity to be a good game. And then, of course, whoever wins will have to face a really tough matchup with Westside, who's just been blowing people out all season. And so it'll definitely be tough for whoever wins at 7 p.m. at GI Memorial Stadium. So we are going to transition right from that into our game pick. So, of course, this is the first round. Got a lot of good matchups. We'll start with the 24 and the 9 game. Lincoln Northeast playing against Kearney. Does Lincoln Northeast have a chance, Jaden?
No. Not a way to put it. No. I mean, Kearney's going to be able to blow by this game easily. They're going to go into their next possibility up in their next game. Hopefully they can take down a really good team in Gretna. I think that's going to be, probably one of the best matchups we'll see next week. Lincoln Northeast, I mean, their fans are, of course, are going to push for them. They'll be a second straight year where they won't win a game.
Yeah, it'll be tough. Just losing every game, but yeah, I'm gonna pick Kearney in pretty easy fashion there. So moving on, you got the 21 seeded Papillion La Vista South versus the Fremont Tigers. 21-12. Who do you got in this one, Jaden?
I mean, Fremont needs a boost. They need that running game to come back in this one. Papio South, like we said, really struggling so far this year. They don't really have too much going for them. I think Fremont will be able to win this game somewhat heavily. I think this game will be, probably a 14, 21 point game in favor of Fremont. And then it'll be interesting to see what they can do going into their next matchup.
I mean, yeah, I think Fremont will be able to win this one pretty well as well. But like you said, this has the opportunity to possibly be made a game out of, but I'm going to take Fremont pretty handily. So in what I think could be a good one, and you said that this also could be a good one, you got 20 Papillion La Vista Monarchs versus number 13 Columbus.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about that a little bit in the Lincoln Southwest versus North Star matchup, which we're going to see in our game of the week. With this one, it's really going to come down to that fourth quarter. Who can really take momentum? We've seen both of these teams have a really strong first half. They've been really strong in that second quarter. Both been a little bit slow to start in the first part of the first quarter, but have really grown it in their back half. Their second and third drive is really where they're able to get momentum on both sides. They have a really, stylistic type of offense that both of them have some of the same. They both run the ball a little bit. Their passing yards have really been the issue for them. Papillion La Vista has had a little bit more of a passer rating with Seth Overmeyer. And I think this game is going to be a close one. This game is going to come down to the last few minutes in the fourth quarter. Who wants their season to live more? It's going to be Columbus.
Yeah, I'm agree with you on that one. And I do think it could be close. Even though I'm officially off the Monarch train, I still think that they're going to make this one close. But I'll take Columbus in this one as well. So, Buell game, the late one, you got number 19 Bellevue East playing number 14 Millard West. Millard West trying to come back, and I want to talk about this. That's the beautiful thing about this year is that, playoffs are a new start. Everybody makes it. Everybody's got a chance. What are you seeing in this game?
It's going to be a really great matchup. I think it's going to be a lot closer than it should be. The offense of Millard West is really going to prevail in this one. I feel Nathan Peterson, coming back, even though he is technically the backup running back for this team. He has been such a powerful offensive weapon for this team that even with Brady Braw at quarterback, which I think he can make some big plays. I think this is going to be a really big step forward for Brady Braw, where he can get somewhat comfortable up against a secondary that has really struggled this year in Bellevue East. Over, the Chieftains haven't really been able to put too much of a fight up on defense all season. They've only had two wins this season up against some lower, even some actually lower Lincoln teams. But Millard West, I think, will be able to prevail in this one and really get back to an interesting matchup up against Millard South.
Yeah, I'm agree with you on that one. Getting back somewhat healthy. You still don't got your starting quarterback or original starting running back, but Nathan Peterson's back. He's been practicing it all week. And I think a key on that defense is going to be Tyler Jett. He's going to make TK Barnett's day a little bit difficult, but TK is going to have to make some plays against this pretty solid Millard West defense. I still think maybe not the bet like in that top 5, 7, but I still think it's a really good defense in Class A. I'll take Millard West by 10. I'm going to take Millard West by 10 in this one. So then you got the early game at Buell, Millard North hosting Norfolk.
Millard North, I think, will just easily cruise past this one. They'll get back to 500. Jimmy Quaintance will have a really good game. He'll be out by halfway through the third quarter. They'll be able to get some of their backup guys in. I know it's weird to say that they're going to get their second team in going into a playoff matchup, which is, in my mind, to some degree, to some coaches, that can be a little bit disrespectful. But I think, Norfolk just really had a struggling season. They really haven't been able to give any offensive weapons to that side of the ball. I think this game will be a closer one that we've seen in the past for Norfolk. I'm saying about, a 24 to about 27 point victory for Millard North.
Yeah, I'll agree with you. Millard North's been on a hot streak to end out the season, and I think they keep it rolling against a struggling Norfolk team. Jimmy Quaintance, of course. I mean, what else can you say about him? He's been an absolute baller for the Mustangs this year. He'll keep it going. He'll keep his good season going, and like you said, be out mid-third quarter or something like that. So, 23 Lincoln High playing number 10 North Platte. North Platte trying to keep the momentum going.
Yeah, I mean, I think they will. I mean, a great win up against Millard West last week. We thought it might be a little bit of a closer game. I know it's a 10-point game, but I really felt North Platte just kept the momentum throughout that entire game. They really controlled that one, even though they weren't able to blow it open in any sense. They really never gave Millard West a true chance to to get back in that ball game and make it interesting. I think North Platte will be able to easily take over this Lynx offense, a really big running offense. I think Lincoln High might be able to make it a little scary in that first quarter if they're able to get that ball first and able to run the clock a ton. I think if Lincoln High can run the clock very well in that first quarter, they can make it somewhat interesting. But the way North Platte's offense is going to work, this isn't going to be a blowout. This isn't going to be a ridiculous, like 42-0 game. But the way North Platte's offense works, that ground game, that really, strong defensive game, I don't think Lincoln High is really going to be able to adjust to that. And I think it'll be, about a 24-3 victory in favor of North Platte.
Yeah, I'll agree with you. I've told you this before. I've always been a fan of more of those running and defensive kind of teams. I know you don't exactly see eye to eye on me on that. But I've always been a fan of those kind of teams. And, that's how North Platte has done it. They've been pretty successful sitting where they are right now. And I think they keep it going, but against Lincoln High, get a pretty solid win and advance to the second round. So our final game before our game of the week, you got number 18, Lincoln Pius, traveling to play number 15, Grand Island.
This is actually a really good matchup. I think this is going to be a closer one. Another really, ground dominant game. It's really hard to see, Pius not being able to play at Aldrich Field to end off their season, no matter if they win this game or wherever else they go. But I mean, that's a really great atmosphere that you have down in Lincoln. GI Memorial Stadium, again, all you Lincoln Pius fans will be able to go to this game. NSA rules has to be even on both sides to what fans can go to those games. I think Grand Island's going to be able to pull this one out. I think it's going to come in the fourth quarter. It's never really going to be a full-on blowout. I think Grand Island will be able to take over truly in that third quarter and push into the fourth. But going up to the next week up against Westside, it's going to be a sorry story for either one who wins this game.
Yeah, I'm going to pick Grand Island as well, just because, they've had kind of the tougher schedule this year, have lost to some pretty good teams. And I think they'll win, like you said, maybe pull away a little bit in the fourth quarter, win by like 10-13, something like that. But I think Grand Island will advance. So now for our Nebraska High School Game Day game of the week, the 17 and the 16 seed, Lincoln North Star and Lincoln Southwest at Seacrest. Jaden.
This is a really hard one for me. I mean, both teams, they're really evenly matched team. They're both, that middle ground down in Lincoln. I mean, on both sides. I mean, they're like you see there. I mean, you see those stats. I mean, they're so evenly lined up against some different schedules so far this season. It's a really hard one to choose. I haven't really truly thought about this one too much to exactly who I'm going to pick. I've been on both sides. I'm really thinking the passing game is going to be a really big factor for both these teams. Southwest has been somewhat on a winning streak on a back end of it, and North Star have been going up against that game last week, 64-0, going up against Village South, a really rough one for them. I think I'm going to have to take Lincoln Southwest in this one. It's going to come down to the fourth quarter. It's going to be a really good matchup. I believe you guys can watch that game at Lincoln Public Schools. I believe they'll have some kind of stream of it. We'll have to find a link and be able to send that out sometime either later today with that matchup. But I really think Lincoln Southwest is just going to be able to pull it out late in that fourth quarter.
I'm going to disagree with you. I'm going to go Lincoln North Star in this one. They lead both categories here stat wise. And I'm not just just going off stats, but I like what Lincoln North Star is doing. But I think this is going to be a really good game. Two, I wouldn't say not great, but I also wouldn't say great Lincoln teams going up against each other, trying to advance, make something out of their season. I think this is going to be a really close game. I'm really looking forward to seeing how these two teams match up. Maybe it could be in for a high scoring shootout. But I will take Lincoln North Star in our game of the week. So before we wrap things up, Jaden, just final thoughts from you about, first round of the playoffs and, just how everything's been this year.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing that we're able to, still have football with everything going on this season, with 7 teams dropping out originally, with a lot of changes in Class A so far this season. It's amazing that we're still able to have football and still have really competitive football. I mean, even in that game of the week, I think going into the game of the week, why I chose that pick is really how a lot of playoff situations work. Whoever has the fourth quarter dominant offense, especially in close matchups where both the teams, have a similar style of offense, that's where I want to take who's going to win these games, who's going to want it more, who's going to want to keep their season alive, and maybe become somewhat of a Cinderella story in this one. We haven't seen a lot of parity in Class A this season. There's really been, about a 3 to 4 tier system with the top two of Bell West and West Side. And it's really hard for me to see anything else than those teams being in the final once again this season. It really comes down to who's going to win that one, down at Memorial Stadium.
Yeah, I mean, it's just great to bring you guys all this coverage. We've had a lot of fun doing this show every single week. It looks a little different this week, but we should hopefully be back in person. Dynamic duo back together again next week for some really good for some what should be really good second round playoff action. So yeah, that is our game of the week, and that is the end of our show. We will make sure to tweet out where you can find all of these live streams. We'll try our best to retweet scores. I know I'll be commentating the Millard West Bellevue East game, which you can catch on our Millard West Drive channel. But yeah, should be back next week. In person. But yeah, thank you guys for watching this week's show. A lot of great action, and we will be back next week.